This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Happy Friday. It's a big weekend of recruiting for SMU, and we've got you covered on that front at ontheponyexpress.com. So do me a favor, use our YouTube code and hit the subscribe button to ontheponyexpress.com for just $1, getting you 2 months of coverage using the code SMU1. That's SMU, the number 1. And of course, got to remind you guys, we are presented by our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. David Henry and his entire team can get you from point A to point B with that level of luxury that you expect from a private jet charter company. You can give them a call at 866-674-1192 and use the code PonyUpACC or mention on theponyexpress.com to get a discount on a round trip flight. Always a good thing when you're looking for a private jet experience. And look, summer is approaching. Some really cool opportunities to fly out of Dallas Love Field, especially for you guys who are local. That's one of the top private jet airports in the entire country in terms of traffic. And you can go pretty much wherever from Dallas with our friends at StatusJet, whether you're on a big jet, small jet, or just want to stay local in a helicopter. StatusJet can take you there and plan out your entire trip. If you're looking to go somewhere tropical, they can get you to those hard to reach places around the globe. So talk with them about your options, whether you're going on a family trip, getting ready to book a business trip, all the things, they can handle it for you at StatusJet. We've got to jump into some commitments as SMU landed 2 earlier this week with Billy Walton, a Texas transfer, announcing he was coming to SMU to complete the rest of his college career. And Jaden Milliner-Jones, a familiar name for those of you who are big-time recruitniks, a former SMU commit transferring from Colorado to SMU. Let's dive into Billy Walton, who got SMU on the board during the week with his commitment, and a former Dallas South Oak Cliff 2-time state champion is headed back to the Dallas area for his opportunity to play for the Mustangs. He didn't play much for the Longhorns this fall. It was just his first season on the 40 acres. 6'2.5-ish, 215-pound edge rusher will really shore up that position long term. You've got guys like Jafari Harvey entering his final year of eligibility, as well as a really backloaded room that next year you're looking at Isaiah Smith, Cam Robertson, Jalen Samuels could theoretically play there. And SMU wanted to kind of balance the roster, and the idea was to get Billy Walton on board, and he'll be able to factor in potentially down the line if he develops the right way. He had offers from Texas A&M, Tennessee, Oklahoma State. He was a one-time Cowboy commit there before flipping to Texas. And you bring back a 2-time state champion, helps you in the Dallas area. SMU's roster is approaching 50% of DFW players making up the roster. So they continue to prioritize that in recruiting, both in the high school ranks and the transfer portal. And when I look at this Billy Walton addition, I like what Sam Dunham is doing by bringing him in. Scott Simons, of course, signing off on it as well, because again, it kind of takes the pressure off of you when you bring in a 2025 guy, which they're shooting for the likes of Kamarian Morgan and some other guys out there. They're going to have Smith Orogbo on campus later this month. He's a 5-star if the rankings ended today for On3. So you're recruiting some talent, but you want to make sure that that position is addressed. And then you're going to have a guy who can maybe redshirt if they come in the 2025 class, and then you're really balanced well in that room. So Colin Simmons, the 5-star prospect, signs with Texas, gets on campus, slides into that edge position for Texas. And so the writing was kind of on the wall for Billy Walton, who when you look around at what Texas has done in recruiting, sometimes that just happens. Good players can get recruited over by elite prospects like a Colin Simmons. And that's kind of what happened to Billy Walton. So he's looking for an opportunity to get on the field and really start to play. And so he'll be in probably a small role this season, but the goal is to really get him going in the long term for SMU, as he'll be a part of the future at that position. So they dip back into their familiar territory of a Dallas area standout to bring him back home and let him take a run at developing into some type of a contributor for SMU. So a nice addition there in Billy Walton, who was highly recruited. We'll see how he develops. Obviously, just playing in 2 games for the Longhorns, he wasn't a guy that was, playing a ton this past season as Texas, had Anthony Hill and had some other guys on that defensive line that were contributing. And of course, he was just a true freshman this season. So you get a guy who's kind of a best available take. And we talked about that a lot when it came to the transfer portal. So after bringing in Jared Harrison Hunt early this week, SMU gets Billy Walton to solidify the long-term future of another position on the defensive line. With SMU going into the transfer portal and looking for a safety, this is a name that really made a lot of sense. And there were a lot of opportunities for SMU to go out and address this position with other players, but they go out and land Jaden Milliner-Jones, a former DeSoto standout who won a state championship, and then days later flipped from SMU to Colorado to go play for Deion Sanders for a year in kind of one of those deals where, look, Craig Niver left at the time, and SMU had some changes on the coaching staff after that first season of the Rhett Lashley era, and he just slid over to go play for the Buffs. And, being a Dallas area guy, we've seen SMU go out to a Colorado school and bring back a Brandon Crosley from Colorado State. But this time they go to Colorado to get Jaden Milliner-Jones. He has 4 years to play 3 seasons remaining, and that's because he played 12 games for Colorado this fall and started 1 against Washington State. So a much kind of different player coming in terms of experience for SMU. He notched 25 tackles with 19 solo tackles, so impressive in the open field with 3 pass breakups. And he really came on late in the season, 19 of those tackles coming in the final 5 games of the season. If you look at Colorado Twitter, this is a guy that a lot of people were upset about leaving. You want to bring in guys who stick around and develop. And when you see true freshmen get on the field early, that's a good sign if you're looking at the long-term development. So he was, in my opinion, underrated as a recruit coming out of high school before flipping to Colorado, and still ended up underrated in terms of recruiting rankings, but he could play. And I think for SMU, you bring him in and the goal is to have him potentially play all over. He could theoretically play nickel. He could play safety, and any of the spots in the safety group, Scott Simons could see him in. And, SMU really had this one lined up for a minute. He officially visited SMU last month, and we reported on it. If you're on the Pony Express, you can get that inside scoop. And people were asking, well, what's the deal? Why hasn't he announced? What's next? And it was because, look, SMU has a veteran safety group, and you don't want to chase off a guy because you bring in somebody who played 12 games and started a game for a Pac-12 team last season to that position. So he announced on Tuesday, announced on Tuesday or Wednesday, right after the transfer portal window closed, or at least SMU knew they weren't going to be losing any more players to that position. And I like this pickup. I've been a big Jaden Milliner-Jones fan. He did it all for DeSoto and really played some of his best football late in his high school career. Big kid. So it made a lot of sense to me when I saw he was playing a lot for Colorado this year. And I flipping late, it was kind of the hot button discussion on the board for this one, with the way it kind of went down, where he had won the state title, he was going to sign with SMU, and then I think he had SMU gear on and took it off and put on the Colorado. So it was a big show. And look, sometimes it might not be viewed as a mistake. He played a ton for Colorado, but you realize, okay, I'm all the way out in Colorado. Maybe I want to come back home and play for SMU. And so they welcomed him back with open arms. And this is a pickup that made a lot of sense. And if you're looking at the safety room, the long-term future of it, very secure. Next year, you'll have Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wacobia back. You'll lose Brandon Crosley, CJ Sanders, and Jonathan McGill. Jaden Milliner-Jones will have opportunities to step up in that role. And you have 3 safety commits in the class of 2025. You signed Jalen Moses, signed Kadavian Dodson Walker. Kyron Chambers can play there. Abdul Muhammad had a nice spring. Scott Simons, Ricky Hunley recruiting this safety room has been a really, really nice development for SMU. And we're seeing that with some of the relationships that they've built and able to get that room buttoned up really early on in this 2025 class as well. So a really nice pickup in Jaden Milliner-Jones to get him on board, and one that made sense from the get-go. And it was just a matter of time before he jumped on board and committed to the Mustangs. So what's next for SMU in the transfer portal? This is where things get interesting because they're down to a couple of scholarships left. With the transfer portal window now closed, they have an idea of who's in, who's out, and players that they maybe were monitoring. They know now that you're done seeing new players enter. You can finalize that last bit of your board and go after players. And we're going to see SMU address the offensive line. They've addressed the defensive line. They've addressed the safety room. We've seen them bring in some other pieces that are kind of best available takes, and that's still going to be on the table. It's always on the table for SMU. They do a nice job of saying, hey, where can we address positions with a really solid player that can help us long term? You look at what they did with Brashard Smith as a prime example, this early window, bringing him in and getting him in for spring ball. People were saying, do they really need another wide receiver, running back gadget? Well, when you have a kick returner like that, yes, you do. You have the opportunity to bring him in, you do it. And again, you look at what SMU brought in on the defensive line, kind of the same thing with Jared Harrison-Hunt. So SMU now can turn their full attention to the offensive line. And if you're on theponyexpress.com, we dropped the notes on who's coming in town. And it's kind of an offensive line party in a weekend that SMU is hosting as they look to solidify that offensive line for the 2024 season. They know they need a cornerback. That is still also on the table. I want to make that clear. But they're working to find somebody that really fits what they want in that corner, which is somebody that can contribute, that they feel is almost a no-brainer type of take. And so there's some options on there. We'll drop some notes on that as well as things unfold with that. But this weekend, heavy offensive line coming to the Hilltop. And one player I do want to single out, and again, if you subscribe for just $1 for your first 2 months using code SMU1, you can learn the rest of the names. But a guy that included SMU in his top 3 is Texas A&M transfer Colton Thomasson, included SMU along with Baylor and UTSA. He's from the state of Texas, from Spring Branch. Boy, I talked with a couple sources earlier this week, and I said, I'm looking at the guys that you're recruiting at the offensive line position. You guys are really taking, wanting to upgrade that size really seriously. And it kind of got a laugh. And they said, yeah, this is a type of position that when we've self-scouted and we've scouted the ACC, we need to have some guys with size. And there's not many guys bigger. Maybe Ramsey Brooks from TCU is 450 pounds, but you don't want to kind of mess around with that, quite honestly. So they go and find a guy that's 6'8", 347 pounds in Colton Thomasson, and they're going to bring him in for an official visit this weekend. He's down to Baylor, SMU, and UTSA. He spent 1 season with the Aggies, made 2 appearances as he redshirted, so 4 years of eligibility, and was a borderline 3-star, 4-star coming out of high school where he played at Smithson Valley. And again, SMU wanting to address this position with size, and that's exactly what they're doing, bringing in a guy like Colton Thomasson. So he's somebody that will need to continue to get his body right. I don't necessarily think you want him playing at 350, 330 pounds, but if he can get down to 320, that would be ideal, in my opinion, at least. So SMU is bringing him in as an official visitor. And again, we talk about this a lot. If you look at the offensive tackle position, you've got Justin Osborne, who's in his final year of eligibility. So he is the lone offensive lineman outside of Ben Sparks and Ja'Kai Clark, who are on the move. But Justin's the only one that really has tackle experience. And then you have Savion Byrd going into his final year in 2025, along with Caleb Johnson. So there is kind of some backlog that is starting to form at the offensive line. And this would be a guy who makes a lot of sense. You can bring him in, and he can allow Sean Scott, who needs to get a lot bigger, you can allow him to continue to grow and get stronger and not be called into action if he's asked to, because right now it's PJ Williams and Savion Byrd, and Caleb Johnson's in there, but there's really just not anyone that they necessarily trust in a big way just yet. So you bring in Colton Thomasson for a visit, and he's able to be somebody that can have 4 years of eligibility remaining. He's seen just a touch of action with the Aggies, so at least you've got that going for you if you can get him on board. They have some high-level names at the offensive tackle position that they're kind of kicking the tires around, so I'm interested to see how this one ends up. The offensive tackle position is one of the most highly competitive in the transfer portal window, and if SMU can get one of these guys on board, it'd be a big help for the long-term future of the offensive line, and in particular in the 2024 season, if they can get one of the guys that really could push for a starting job. Because, look, Garen Justice is a tinkerer when it comes to that offensive line. We saw that with Justin Osborne playing center this spring, and I'm not so sold that he's going to remain there. Just a little gut feeling. Garen Justice likes to move pieces around. We saw Alex Woods emerge as an option. Maybe he is a guy that could step up in this fall and play center, and Justin Osborne can play guard. And then you have Logan Parr, Justin Osborne, and then Ja'Kai Clark kind of moving around all three positions. You have Ben Sparks back. You have some options, but they really want to find the best five. And so that's what they need to do. And if they can bring in a tackle who has starting experience or really can be that guy for them to push a Savion Byrd or a PJ Williams, that's something they want to do. And the depth at offensive tackle right now is just something they have to address. So Colton Thomasson makes a lot of sense to bring in, and he's a big dude with 4 years of eligibility who signed with an SEC team. I'm not the biggest on bringing in offensive tackles with that size. I dropped an interesting article on SMU's site, which is the breakdown of NFL draft picks as recruits, and the offensive tackle position is always one that I pay attention to. And just 15 of 60 NFL draft picks picked in rounds 1 through 3 in the from 2019 to 2024 were over 6'6", and not many of them were over 320 pounds. 9 of the 60. So Colton Thomasson is kind of battling some analytics there, but SMU wants to bring in some size to that offensive line, and that's something that they had last year without a doubt. And they were able to use that, and it worked out. Now, it's a different jump to the ACC. We'll see how it goes for SMU overall when it comes to that jump. But they are trying to bring in some depth and competition there on the offensive line. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. That's about it as of now as far as what I'm hearing on visitors this weekend. What I can say is that you guys should take a trip with our friends at statusjet.com. That is our partner for all of our podcasts. They're our presenting sponsor, and game day is approaching in just a few months with Nevada. So plan your trip to Reno with Status Jet. Maybe do a pit stop somewhere fun. I don't know. But Status Jet can help you score that touchdown you're looking for with game day because of the comfort, the luxury, the convenience that they bring to the table. They can be your MVP. So you use that code PonyUpACC for a discount on round trip flights. That'll really help you out as well. David Henry and his entire team can get you there from point A to point B, plan the entire thing, help you get your transportation on the ground as well, and just do it first class. So that's why we partnered with them. They're great people, proud supporters of SMU Athletics and the On the Pony Express podcast. Shifting gears, got to talk about some high school recruiting. I told you guys we'd talk about it later in the week, and that is because the month of May is here. It's a big opportunity for SMU to make a statement in the 2025 class with that May 17th weekend. And Chad Simmons, our national recruiting reporter, did make people's day on the SMU board by logging a prediction for Xavier Johnson, Richland High's star wide receiver. He's one of the top wide receivers in the area. You see that RPM sitting there, if you're watching on YouTube, now reflects 99% for SMU. Rob Likens was by there this week to stop in and see Richland get after it a little bit. And Xavier Johnson is a big priority for SMU, and he's been to campus half dozen times this year already. He's got offers from Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, and others. We saw him at the Under Armour All-America camp in Dallas, and SMU offered shortly before that. And I really liked the offer, and I liked it a lot more once I saw him in person. A very natural pass catcher. His gauntlet was among the best that we saw in the camp. So I like what SMU is doing here in this recruitment. He's a pretty quiet kid in a way. And the same kind of goes for his teammate that also picked up an on-3 RPM pick from Chad Simmons, and that is Michael Turner. And this isn't to scoff at Xavier Johnson, who's a really good player, but Michael Turner, on-3's number 3 running back in the entire country, the 51st ranked prospect in the land, now reflects SMU as the on-3 RPM leader, and he is a dominant running back. He's averaged 7.8 yards per carry his first 3 seasons of varsity football, scoring 36 times. This past season ran for 1,625 yards and 22 scores. I'm a big fan of Michael Turner. He really checked all the boxes for me when I saw him move around at the Under Armour Dallas camp. He earned a top performer nod from on-3 as well. Again, been on campus a half dozen times. Michael Turner did really name SMU his leader. So it's not just Chad reading the tea leaves here. He named him his leader. He does plan to officially visit TCU this coming weekend, actually. So he's stopping in to Fort Worth for an official visit. And the Frogs are viewed as the biggest competition here. So we'll be keeping a close eye on if they can make a move. But Baylor, Florida, Oklahoma State, and Washington are also in the mix. But SMU does hold that May 17th official visit with him. Kyle Cooper has done a really nice job recruiting him. Rhett Lashley is somebody Turner's connected with a lot. And they're right down the road from him. So it seems like he wants to stay close to home. SMU's offering that opportunity. And if SMU can get Michael Turner along with Keelan Russell in the boat, that give them 2 top 100 prospects committed in the class of 2025. SMU's 2025 class sits 24th nationally in the country, and a lot of it with Dallas area prospects. Dropped a new story on SMU's latest commitment, Jalen Shivers from the Atlanta area, who pairs with Cameron Cullins to represent SMU's push into the ATL on the defensive line. But you look at SMU's recruiting class, and it's kind of poised to potentially take off, especially if that Pony Express weekend that they're coining it on May 17th really pays off for them. They've got a number of prospects that we'll be talking about over the coming weeks and months, making a move in their recruitment. So when you look at what SMU is doing in the class of 2025, you've got to like it. And I mean, Michael Turner is a prime example of what this ACC move can do for recruiting. If you get Keelan Russell to stay committed, which I talked about on the Inside Scoop with Josh Newberg, if you didn't check it out on our national channel, this is a offensive class that Rhett Lashley has got to be salivating over early on. That thought of bringing in Michael Turner to join Dalen Singleton, and if you can get Xavier Johnson, you're really sitting pretty for the future of this Mustangs offense. And Keelan Russell, we've talked a lot about it. He's fresh off an Ole Miss visit. He's going to head to SMU in a couple of weeks for his official visit. He's been back on campus for the spring game. Alabama is expected to host him for an official visit, as is Florida after SMU. But I will note, SMU quarterback commit Keelan Russell did pick up a prestigious invite, and that is from the On3 Elite Series. And On3 is the leader in covering NIL. There's no doubt about it that we've made it a priority from the get-go when Shannon Terry started this version of his recruiting sites that he's done in the past. And what it is we bring some of the best prospects in the country together in Nashville in late May for a weekend invitation-only series around NIL, and you bring in professional athletes, former college athletes, marketing executives, and other experts in the field, as well as a couple celebrities for a 2-day private event with their families. It's first class. It's down there up there in Nashville. They stay right downtown. Kirk Herbstreit was there, Livy Dunn, all talking about NIL and the right way to handle it and how to build your brand as well. And for Keelan to get that opportunity is really, really cool. And just speaks to what we think of Keelan as well, having him as a top 100 prospect. His teammate, DeCorian Moore, the 5-star plus wide receiver, will be there, as well as some of the other top recruits in the entire country. So pretty cool honor for Keelan Russell. His rise continues. And I will throw a shameless plug for our national channel. If you go watch the Inside Scoop and I linked it on our message board. If you go follow Josh Newberg on Twitter or go to the On3 National YouTube channel, you can find it where they're talking about Keelan this week. Brian Stump from the Elite 11 program was on there talking about what they like about Keelan. Chad Simmons was on there talking about Michael Turner's RPM and where he stands with that. So overall, it was a really good week for SMU on the national side of things from our On3 team. So be sure to keep an eye on that. But look, guys, recruiting is going to keep heating up. So subscribe to On the Pony Express for just $1 for 2 months using code SMU1. We will have a lot more coverage on recruiting next week as we fully get geared up for what is going to be a monster weekend, both May 10th, few prospects, top prospects coming in, as well as that May 17th weekend. So jump on board. We've got the intel on the transfer portal, guys who are coming in this weekend. So stay tuned for more on that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast to get your Friday going. And we will catch you guys next week with another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU On3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.